Knowing how to polish up your audio a bit is hugely important to the dialogue editing process. Even though you're working with the rough cut of your project, and you've probably got a dedicated sound team to clean up the audio before the final output, you still want to be working with dialogue that sounds good. Alright, so that's a bit vague. So what is good sounding dialogue? Well, good sounding dialogue is dialogue that minimizes distracting audio problems, like interference, phasing, hums, excessive cloth rustling against a mic, audio peaking, large differences in levels, and a few other problems that tend to plague production audio. And on a higher level, it's dialogue that allows you to experience the piece in a way that's as close as possible to the way that your audience will, after it's all been cleaned up and polished by the sound department. As you're rough cutting, you'll want to make sure that you aren't distracted from how a moment really feels due to excessively poor quality audio. For that reason, you'll want to tidy up your dialogue a bit using a few of the key audio tools that you have at your disposal. Primarily, you'll be working with equalizers, which are used to control the levels of your audio at specific frequency ranges. You'll also be working with compressors, which are designed to compress the overall levels of your audio to a specific decibel range. If you've got dialogue where some is peaking quite loud and some is barely audible, adding a compressor can help balance out these extremes and move everything a bit towards the middle. And last, you've got tone. As you probably know, tone is simply an audio recording on a set to capture its unique version of silence, like this. It obviously isn't completely silent because air ducts, outside sounds, and other subtle audio hums and buzzes are often captured. A quick and dirty tip for smoothing out a choppy dialogue exchange with lines broken up by complete silence is to add a constant layer of room tone, filling in the areas of no dialogue with a more natural version of silence between the lines. While using tone is not an actual function of your editing software, it's still a crucial tool to employ when cleaning up your dialogue. Now, I want to take a little time and dig deeper into one of these tools, the equalizer. As I mentioned earlier, equalizers allow you to selectively boost up and quiet down different frequencies within your sound. So how can the EQ tool directly improve your dialogue editing? For starters, you can use it to remove extreme high and low frequencies from your dialogue. Let's say your production audio has a low-pitched hum in the background, or maybe it's just a little bit too boomy, like this.
Yeah, and I was wondering, if you're not too busy, could you possibly help me out with the final as well?
You can use the EQ tool in your editing software to strip away some of the low-end frequencies, below, say, 50 hertz or so.
Yeah, and I was wondering, if you're not too busy, could you possibly help me out with the final as well?
And a before and after.
Yeah, and I was wondering, if you're not too busy, could you possibly help me out with the final as well? Yeah, and I was wondering, if you're not too busy, could you possibly help me out with the final as well?
You can do the same on the upper frequencies, stripping them away to remove high-pitched hisses, whistling, or tinny qualities that you might find in your audio. Here's a line that sounds a little too trebly and hissy.
By the way, I really like your shirt.
So let's lower the decibels on the frequencies that fall above, say, 12 to 15 kilohertz. And have a listen.
By the way, I really like your shirt.
Much better. Next, you can also use the EQ tool to help match the sound quality of different microphones. Add a bit of low end here, or maybe boost the high end there to smooth out the transitions between various audio sources and create a more cohesive sounding dialogue mix. Let's look at a quick example. Listen to the difference between these two parts of Max's line, simply because they've come from different takes and slightly different microphone positions relative to his mouth.
Thank you so much for helping me out with that paper. I think I'm really starting to get the hang of this French thing now.
The first part is a bit crisper and clearer, while the second has a little bit too much low end and gets a little loud as well.
Thank you so much for helping me out with that paper. I think I'm really starting to get the hang of this French thing now.
Just by adding an EQ to that second part of his line, removing some of the lows and the mids, and then boosting the higher end frequencies a bit, we've been able to match the audio quality much more closely between the two lines.
Thank you so much for helping me out with that paper. I think I'm really starting to get the hang of this French thing now.
This is going to help keep viewers immersed in the scene. At this stage of the production, your viewers are your director, your producer, your client, and of course yourself. All these viewers of the rough cut should be able to experience the piece without distraction, so that they can know if each section works at a dramatic and emotional level. As I said before, mismatched audio is going to make that harder than it needs to be. And third, you can use EQ to notch out a frequency in your music to make audio space for your dialogue to shine through. Rather than just relying on boosting levels on your dialogue, you can actually decrease the levels of your music only in the frequency range occupied by the human voice. This will allow both your music and your dialogue to be heard by the viewer. Since the human voice ranges in frequency from around 500 Hz all the way up to around 3000 Hz, a good rule of thumb is to notch out a narrow range around 1500 Hz, right in the middle. You'll want to decrease the volume of your music in these frequencies by around 15 decibels. So remember, to make room in your music for the human voice to cut through, decrease your music volume by 15 decibels at 1500 Hz, hence the 15 by 15 rule. In this lesson, we looked at some qualities of good sounding dialogue. We introduced you to some key audio tools for cleaning up and smoothing out dialogue, specifically equalizers, compressors, and tone. Then, we dug a little bit deeper into the EQ tool, and we looked at 3 ways that EQ can be used to improve dialogue. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to learn how to really begin sculpting and shaping actor performance in a cut. We'll start by learning how to cut for the scene objective and control the character in focus. All right, I'll see you in a bit.